ShipLife by Michelle Shaw, formerly Michelle Leverick. ShipLife Introduction. So what is all the fuss about ShipLife and how does it differ from other books of its kind? Quite simply, ShipLife is the equivalent of meeting a diverse group of people who, despite their personality, culture and personal circumstances, they all have one thing in common. They have worked or are still working on ships. Imagine all of these people coming together in one room, sharing what they like, what they dislike, and what they have learned from their experiences at sea. ShipLife is your passport to discover if a life at sea is for you, to explore the differences between cruise and cargo ships, and it's about understanding your transition and utilising your time on board, should you choose to go. Despite my lengthy preparations for the job interview and all the questions I asked, I came home with no idea of what a typical day on board would be like, nor any understanding of the training I would receive, or my allocated emergency duties. This is because my preparation was based on previous interviews for work on land. My first day on board was very exciting, but also overwhelming. From the moment I boarded, I was bombarded with information and reliant on everyone. It was a real culture shock, being told where to go, what to do, when and how to do it, for every minute of the day. Furthermore, my routine, my working hours and time off were never really properly explained to me. I was on information overload, constantly getting lost, and found it difficult to relax. My expectations were unrealistic. I had made assumptions for sure, as I was expecting the same level of training and support that I was used to receiving on land. And having promised myself that no matter how difficult things got, I was determined to overcome these hurdles and stick it out. Whilst I did eventually settle into life on board, I became more and more aware of the impact this transition had on me. The initial stress and confusion didn't just affect my entire day and overall emotional well-being. I saw it in others who, like me, were simply trying to adjust and adapt to their new surroundings. That I felt drawn to making life easier for them, but the reality was that I was still making sense of it myself. The more settled I became in my role, the more I began to explore possibilities. I was keen to learn more about my shipmates and curious to know what had brought them here and what made them tick. By sharing my own life experiences, feelings and thoughts, the deeper I connected with them and I learned about theirs. Passengers seemed to be so intrigued about us as individuals that with every 7 to 12 day cruise came a new set of passengers and questions, most of which had been asked the week before. Did we enjoy working on board? Where did we live on the ship? And what were our dreams and aspirations? Knowing this was of interest to the passengers as well as myself, I came up with the idea of interviewing my colleagues on my daily radio show, where despite feeling extremely nervous and anxious and worried about messing up live on air, it was the excitement of what I could accomplish and the difference I could potentially make to the passengers that drove me to confront my fears. I lined up interviews with my shipmates from different departments and named the programme Behind the Uniform, where together we shared our experiences of life on board and how we came to work on ships. And as nerve-wracking as it was to do it live, I really enjoyed it and received complimentary passenger and crew feedback. Unfortunately, due to tight crew schedules, participants were hard to find, and it did mean that the interviews would have to come to a stop. And as my first contract came to an end, I was confident about the difference I could make on board and loved the opportunities that were coming my way, especially bringing one of my ideas to life, and that I even made my intentions clear in my appraisal about my dream of pursuing a contractual DJ-only position. Within 2 months of disembarking in October 2008, I secured my dream position and returned to sea as a guest entertainer DJ for another cruise line. While my transition to a contractor was nowhere near as daunting as coming to sea for the first time, new rules, regulations and an international audience to play to meant further adjustments were required. And for the most of the time, it felt like I was on a permanent holiday, which gave me yet again more opportunities to get creative and find some serious mental stimulation. And it wasn't long before I found myself the project, as I met many people who, like me, didn't know anyone who had worked on a ship before, for whom there was little or no opportunity to learn about life at sea before stepping foot on board. We were very much reliant on the information given to us by the cruise line or agency. that in all honesty, if you've never experienced anything like this before, it's highly unlikely you would know what to ask. Anyone lucky enough to be connected to a person with personal experience is not guaranteed to receive a diverse, objective or in-depth account of life on board. So the more I focused on this concept, the more I witnessed the impact and reality of the rabbit in the headlight syndrome, crew members looking so lost and wondering what they'd signed up to. The more aware I became, and the more compelled I felt to do something about it. And the more I believed, just by sharing our personal journeys of working on ships, we could potentially attract a stronger, more confident and prepared individual from day one. I couldn't get the idea out of my head, and was soon talking about it at every given opportunity with crew and passengers. The more I shared my idea of writing this book, the more it evolved and the more volunteers I found to interview and potential customers expressing their interest of purchasing a copy, some of whom became friends for life, whom I wanted to be able to update when I was ready, so stayed in touch with them after their holiday ended. Opportunity knocked again on day 10 of my second contract. Docked in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I headed off the ship to get help with the credit card issues I was having at the time. There I met Tyler working for TravelX, who not only helped me to resolve the issues I was having, but I discovered he had a dream to work on a cruise ship. Tyler gave me a genuine reason to pursue this project and make ShipLife a reality. On returning to the ship, I got to work on my questionnaires and sent out the first batch. One by one they were completed and returned, and I entered the information into my draft manuscript. In between times, I turned my attention to the cover of the book and went in search of any crew member that could draw or paint. One crew member suggested I should go and see Ed in the art gallery, whom I found minutes later on my way back to the cabin preparing for the art auction. I introduced myself, mentioned my book, and we exchanged details. Docking in Aruba the following day, we spotted each other whilst checking Wi-Fi, where Ed's incredible talent became evident. He showed me a painting that he'd been working on. He was an undiscovered artist with an original painting, which matched the vision in my head. And after a few minor adjustments, he had the first cover edition ready for me within 2 weeks. Sadly, our schedules caused complications in our communication and we weren't able to complete it together. But thanks to Ed and him giving me his permission, I was able to continue the project with another designer who was able to take my book cover to the next stage. Whilst I had originally intended to interview someone from every nationality and department, it clearly was not going to be possible. And after many attempts to speak to the officers on the bridge, the opportunity finally presented itself 7 months later in July of 2011. During the early part of my DJ shift, I approached the only couple in the nightclub and struck up a great conversation about their 21-year-old daughter Liz, who was stationed on cargo ships training to become an officer and eventually a captain. They offered me her contact details and Liz invited me to stay with her and come visit the nautical college where she was a cadet. During a 2-week window between contracts, I went to stay with Liz, despite it being the first day of registration and renovations for the college being very much underway. The heads of both the campus and maritime operations gave up their time to welcome me and introduce me to many of the staff. During my time at the college, I learned a whole new side to the Merchant Navy and secured interviews with trainee officers known as cadets and maritime professionals. What an extremely enjoyable and humbling experience this was for me, as it enabled me to take ShipLife to a whole new level. In this book, you'll meet crew members from Australia, Brazil, Chile, England, Germany, Hungary, Indonesia, the Netherlands, the Philippines, Romania and the USA, all working in either the deck, engineering, hotel, casino, entertainment or production departments, from those who are starting out to those who are settled at sea, or have even since left life at sea far behind. Whether they have worked solely on cruise or cargo ships, or experienced both, versus those who've worked in more than one position and or different cruise lines and shipping companies and on different types of ships. We've changed their names not only to protect their identities, but so that we can avoid jeopardising their present and future employment. And for the purpose of clarity, each individual is featured from the lowest to the highest ranking position and length of service, from the youngest additions of the seafaring family to the eldest.